This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Friday, October 4th, 2024. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
The Dockworkers strike has been suspended. I'm Pamela Furr.
An expensive recovery certain as impacts from Helene still unfold.
Can't wait. People need help now.
I'm Clayton Neville.
A jury convicts the 3 Memphis police officers charged in the deadly beating of Tyre Nichols. I'm Bob Brown. I'll have that story.
A former Colorado County clerk was sentenced to 9 years in prison for a voting data scheme. I'm Ed Donahue.
On Wall Street, it's Jobs Friday. We get the September employment report this morning. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
Prosecutors in Los Angeles are reviewing new evidence in the case of the Menendez brothers. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Tesla is recalling nearly 30,000 of its cyber trucks due to a camera issue. I'm Jackie Quinn.
All ahead on America in the Morning. With concerns mounting of supply chain issues and higher costs, the Dockworkers Union has suspended strikes at East and Gulf Coast ports, coming to a deal with port operators until after the start of next year. Pamela Furr has more on the story.
These workers who had been striking for 3 days will be back at work today. The temporary end to the strike came after the International Longshoremen's Association and the U.S. Maritime Alliance reached a tentative agreement on wages. The Associated Press is reporting that a person who did not want to be identified but was briefed on the agreement says the port sweetened their wage offer from about 50% over 6 years to 62%. Of course, any wage increase would have to be approved by union members as part of the ratification process of the final contract. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg was optimistic the strike would be a short one, telling ABC News earlier.
Another indication that this can get done is the West Coast. Recently, the West Coast Dockworkers, which organized under a different contract, came very close to a strike, but they worked out a deal. And part of what the ILA, the East Coast unions, are asking for is a level of wages that is in the neighborhood of what was achieved on the West Coast.
In a statement, President Biden praised the tentative wage deal, saying today's agreement on a record wage and an extension of the collective bargaining process represents critical progress towards a strong contract. I'm Pamela Furr.
The Hurricane Helene death toll has passed 200 lives. The impacts of the storm are still unfolding. Correspondent Clayton Neville has an update.
Well, it's been just over a week since Helene made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane in Florida. Torrential rain caused historic and deadly flooding across that state into Georgia, Tennessee, and the Carolinas. More than half of the deaths in North Carolina.
FEMA teams are literally knocking on doors to register folks so they can receive assistance. It doesn't matter who we help, it's who's needed help. And look, we're going to help as many people as we can.
President Biden made stops yesterday in Georgia and in Florida, touring the damage and speaking with local and state leaders.
This entire project is going to cost billions of dollars, not tens of thousands, not millions, not a billion, billions of dollars.
A long road to recovery as the full scope of the damage isn't clear yet.
We can't wait. Can't wait. People need help now.
The president pointing to Congress, but House Speaker Mike Johnson says relief will take some time.
The states, local authorities, they band together, they assess the damages, they send that to the federal authorities, and it's all worked through in that manner. And then Congress gets a request of a certain amount to cover the losses. And so it will take some time to tabulate this storm. It's one of the biggest in our history, of course.
Speaker Johnson toured damage from Helene in Steinhatchee, Florida.
Right before we left on Wednesday, a week ago, Congress appropriated $20 billion to FEMA to cover the immediate aftermath of the storm. Of course, we knew it was headed into the coast at that time. So FEMA has the funding it needs to respond immediately. We're glad to see them on the ground here.
Hundreds are still missing. Power outages still an issue across parts of the Southeast, to include Georgia. Governor Brian Kemp.
And this is unprecedented that we're dealing with. Previously, the worst storm Georgia Power had ever dealt with, they had 1,700 poles that needed to be replaced. Currently, there are over 8,000. that have to be replaced.
Some clarification this week from officials with FEMA after Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas reportedly suggested that the agency could run out of emergency funds before the end of the season and noted hundreds of millions of dollars were spent on sheltering migrants. FEMA responded by saying it has what it needs for immediate response and recovery, and that money for migrant services is completely separate. I'm Clayton Neville.
County clerk sentenced to almost a decade in prison for vote tampering. We'll have that story and more when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Active weather across the country may disrupt plans for some. Welcome back to America in the Morning. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Carrie Schwindenhammer.
The weather is certainly going to be active across the eastern part of the nation, and specifically from the Tennessee Valley and the central and southern Appalachians down along the Gulf Coast. We'll be looking at some locally heavy rainfall across parts of central and southern Louisiana, into and through the Florida Panhandle as well. There could be some locally heavy rainfall around New Orleans, perhaps into Mobile, Alabama, and certainly into the Pensacola area as well. Spotty thunderstorms also affecting places like Tampa and perhaps even Miami as well. Now, we will have some showers that spread as far north as parts of the mid-Atlantic coastline, maybe even New York City seeing a stray shower. The best chance might be to the north and west. But for the most part, we're expecting a relatively quiet weather in southern New England, and certainly spotty showers can't be ruled out across the Great Lakes. Central part of the nation, relatively quiet except for portions of the Gulf Coast down through Texas. Looks like quite warm weather on tap as well. Temperatures well up into the 80s in Kansas City, into the 90s in the Oklahoma City and Dallas areas, and also quite warm, if not hot, across the southwest. Los Angeles getting into the mid-80s, but the deserts will be above 100. That includes Las Vegas as well. In the northwest, we'll be looking at some wet weather, and that'll result in cool weather across that area as well. Look for showers in Portland with a high in the mid-60s, dry weather in contrast, and warm in Billings. And that's the weather across America. Rain and a thunderstorm in New Orleans, the high 80. Rain will taper off to a couple of showers in Seattle, the high 61. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Carrie Schwindenhammer.
Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. A federal jury handed down a mixed verdict involving 3 former Memphis police officers in connection with the deadly beating of Tyre Nichols. Bob Brown has the story.
A jury reaching a mixed verdict against 3 former Memphis police officers charged in the beating death of Tyre Nichols in January of last year. It happened during a traffic stop.
Get on the ground!
Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, and Justin Smith charged with violating Nichols' civil rights through excessive use of force, unlawful assault, failing to intervene in the assault, and failing to render medical aid. All 3 found guilty of obstruction, the officers pleading not guilty to the charges. Haley was also found guilty of deprivation of rights resulting in bodily injury. Nichols was beaten after running away from officers in that traffic stop. He died 3 days later, close to his home, calling out for his mother. It was 20 minutes before medical aid arrived on the scene. 5 former police officers charged in the case were all members of the Memphis Police Department's Scorpion unit, which was done away with after Nichols' death. All the officers were fired. The 3 officers will be back in court for sentencing on January 22nd. I'm Bob Brown.
In one part of Colorado, it appears there was tampering when it came to the 2020 election results. Correspondent Ed Donahue reports a former Centennial State county clerk has been sentenced to 9 years in prison for a voting data scheme.
Tina Peters was found guilty for allowing an associate of MyPillow's Mike Lindell to misuse a security card to access the Mesa County election system. Lindell is a promoter of false claims. Voting machines were manipulated in 2020 to steal the election from Donald Trump.
You are no hero. You abused your position. and you're a charlatan.
Judge Matthew Barrett told Peters she never took her job seriously.
I'm convinced you would do it all over again if you could. You're as defiant as a defendant as this court has ever seen.
Peters has been unapologetic about what happened.
I've often said God doesn't like people messing with his kids, and I believe I'm a child of God.
Colorado's Attorney General says the sentence was fair and just. I'm Ed Donahue.
Billionaire NFL owners find new ways to rake it in when America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. The Business Report is brought to you by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments takes a disciplined approach with investing, helping clients navigate volatile markets. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Spirit Airlines will be a stock to watch this morning after the carrier, in the wake of a failed merger with fellow low-cost airline JetBlue, is in talks with bondholders over terms for a bankruptcy plan. Spirit already announced they'll be cutting dozens of routes starting next month, and last month they furloughed more than 180 pilots to cut costs. Here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger with more.
Wall Street opens this morning after a losing day for the markets yesterday. The Dow was down 180 points, but the major averages are still near record highs, even though they're struggling.
The overlay of potential retaliation in the Middle East for the Iran airstrikes. You have the anniversary, October 7th on Monday, and you just have a general sense of storm disruptions, strike disruptions. What else might be coming at this market?
CNBC's Mike Santoli. Investors are on hold this morning for the September jobs numbers, which could hint at when and how much the Fed might next cut interest rates. The report will be out at 8:30 Eastern.
That non-farm payrolls report has been the biggest kind of macro catalyst for the last several months because of the implications for the Fed. You know, it was probably the thing that sparked the Fed pivot in the first place, pushed them towards that jumbo size cut. So it's non-farm payrolls that investors need to be watching.
Baird's Ross Mayfield on CNBC. Crude oil is up 8% so far this week on Middle East tensions and whether Israel, possibly with U.S. help, targets Iran's oil facilities with an attack. So far, prices at the pump have actually gone down. The Biden administration can move forward with a student loan forgiveness plan for now, as a federal judge will let a temporary restraining order against the plan expire. The new program could deliver relief to tens of millions of Americans, many of whom were lured into college loans without understanding what they were signing. September was a turning point in the housing market, according to a new Redfin report.
We saw an improvement at long last. They were waiting for the Federal Reserve to cut rates. That finally happened, and now many people who had been on the fence are coming back into the market. It's not a tidal wave, but it's a real swell.
Redfin CEO Glenn Kelman on CNBC.
NFL owners find a new way to make money.
Owners approved a new way to extract cash out of their businesses. And now we have a likely first deal. The Miami Dolphins said to be in talks to sell a minority stake in the team to a private equity firm that values the Dolphins now at $8 billion. The next one may be teeing up.
I think it's going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to have about 15%, and I think that valuation is going to be eye-popping. Unlike this deal, that deal is going to be just for the team. They do control their stadium, which gives you revenue from concerts and such, but you're going to see that deal place a valuation in excess of $7 billion.
CNBC's Michael Ozanian. On today's watch list, it's Jobs Friday. We find out how many jobs were created in the U.S. in September. The NBA preseason begins. The NHL regular season begins. And new in theaters, Lionsgate's White Bird and Warner Brothers' Joker Folia 2. Madness of Two.
CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. When we return, potential freedom for the incarcerated Menendez brothers. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. Welcome back. Potential freedom on the horizon for the incarcerated Menendez brothers. Lisa Dwyer reports the Los Angeles District Attorney says he'll be taking a new look into the 1989 murders of the brothers' parents.
Prosecutors in Los Angeles are reviewing new evidence in the case of the Menendez brothers, who were convicted of killing their parents in their Beverly Hills mansion more than 35 years ago. Attorneys for 53-year-old Eric Menendez and his 56-year-old brother Lyle Menendez have asked a court to vacate their conviction. The brothers were given life sentences for fatally shooting their parents in 1989. The new evidence includes a letter written by Eric Menendez that his attorneys say corroborates the allegations that he was sexually abused by his father. A hearing is scheduled for November 29th. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
If you own a Tesla, this is fast becoming all too familiar for you. Correspondent Jackie Quinn reports the electric truck is being recalled now for the 5th time since it debuted 11 months ago.
Tesla Cybertruck owners are facing another recall, this one due to a problem with the rear view camera. Tesla informed the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration that display screens in affected trucks may be blank for up to 8 seconds after the driver shifts into reverse. Government standards require that happen within 2 seconds of shifting. The company's released a free software upgrade to address the issue. This is the 5th recall since Tesla Cybertrucks went on sale last year. I'm Jackie Quinn.
America in the Morning for Friday, October 4th, 2024, is produced by Jeff McKay. Senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
The campaigning, complaining, and comparing increases.
He who violated the oath.
Lion Kamala Harris. I'm Jim Roop.
Locals in Florida's low-lying Big Bend region are trying to decide how to move forward after a direct hit from Hurricane Helene. I'm Jennifer King.
The world watching what Israel does next. I'm Clayton Neville.
Melania Trump has exposed a stark contrast with her husband as Election Day nears. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
Forecasters are issuing a caution about the waves from Hurricane Kirk. I'm Jackie Quinn.
The number of Americans applying for unemployment benefits rose modestly last week. Hi up in Juaney, Washington.
Back after these messages. Welcome back. Here with America in the Morning. The weather today could impact Hurricane Helene cleanup. With the nation's outlook, here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Carrie Schwindenhammer.
Cleanup efforts continue across parts of the southeast and, of course, in a place like Asheville, which was especially hit hard. We'll still be on the lookout for a spotty shower or two as we head through the day tomorrow. The good news is that beyond that, it should be relatively rain-free. And the weather looks like it will actually cooperate over the next several days beyond today. Now, with that said, there could be some fog during the morning, something to keep an eye out for. Of course, the rain will become more of an issue the farther south you go. In fact, right along the Gulf Coast, New Orleans could see some locally heavy rainfall and the possibility of some ponding on roads, maybe some localized flooding. Wouldn't be surprised if some of that rain falls as far north as Shreveport. Getting into Jackson, there could be some showers, Jackson, Mississippi. And, of course, thunderstorms could impact the Florida Panhandle and portions of southern Alabama as well. Temperatures will be held at bay in some of these areas because of the rain, but a different story across much of Texas. Dallas getting into the lower 90s, low 90s in Oklahoma City, and into portions of southeastern Kansas as well. In contrast, it could be a little bit cooler across South Texas, Harlingen and Brownsville staying in the 80s as some rain will fall there. In the Southwest, we're looking at relatively warm, if not hot weather. Los Angeles getting into the mid-80s, but the deserts will be above 100, 102 for a high in Las Vegas. Meanwhile, the Northwest could be relatively showery, and because of that, also on the cool side, Portland getting into the mid-60s. And it will be dry across the northern plains. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com's Carrie Schwindenhammer.
Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump continue campaigning in battleground states Michigan and Wisconsin as the November election fast approaches. Jim Roop has the story.
It's just over a month before voters choose our next president, and the campaigns ratchet up the rhetoric. Donald Trump in the battleground state of Michigan.
We are going to defeat Lion Kamala Harris, one of the worst candidates ever.
Speaking at a rally in Saginaw, Trump reminding voters that mail-in balloting has already begun, urging supporters now and on Election Day. The GOP turnout has to be overwhelming.
We have to be too big to rig. You know that. Too big to rig. Turn out and vote in record numbers. Too big to rig.
And again, feeding his base with, while not specifically naming, but alluding to the unsubstantiated and even debunked claims of Haitian migrants stealing and eating neighbors' pets in Springfield, Ohio.
You see what's happened with Springfield and Aurora. You see what happened, Springfield, Ohio. You see what's happening. Would you like to have that happen to you?
Harris, meantime, in Wisconsin, urging her supporters to turn out in large numbers to keep Trump from office, suggesting he cares more about himself and his power position than he does about the country and its citizens.
He who violated the oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. And make no mistake, he who, if given the chance, would violate it again.
Also appearing at that rally with Harris, former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney, who told the assembled crowd,
I tell you, I have never voted for a Democrat, but this year I am proudly casting my vote for Vice President Kamala Harris.
Cheney, the daughter of former Republican Vice President Dick Cheney, says Harris is working to unite what she calls reasonable people from all across the political spectrum and at what she calls a critical moment in our nation's history. One of the more recent polls, the NPR PBS News Marist poll, released yesterday, shows Harris ahead of Trump nationally by 2 points. I'm Jim Roop.
After seeing firsthand the devastation in North Carolina, President Biden was in the Florida Panhandle, where Hurricane Helene came ashore as a monster Category 4 storm, decimating everything in its path. As correspondent Jennifer King reports, communities in Florida's Big Bend are grappling with what comes next after the third major hurricane in just 13 months.
In moments like this, it's time to put politics aside. Again, it's not one state versus other, it's the United States. I see you, I hear you, I agree with you, and I promise you we have your back.
Locals in Florida's low-lying Big Bend region are trying to decide how to move forward after a direct hit from Hurricane Helene.
I dare you, Debbie, now it's just compounds all of that.
Eagle Beach native Hud Lilliot and his wife Lori hope to rebuild their canal front home.
So the door was here.
Front door was right here.
A month ago, Brooke Hires and her husband moved from a state-issued trailer where they had lived since Hurricane Idalia.
You feel beat down, like you can't come back from it. You feel like this could be the end of things as you knew it, you know, of your town, of your community, and you right now it's so early, we just don't even know how to recover.
Helene swept their nearly finished house in Horseshoe Bend off of its pilings.
Catastrophic, devastating, heartbreaking. To this magnitude, none of that explains what happened here.
The destruction is testing the resilience of residents who are living in an affordable area that is prone to storms.
I just got finished painting it, and you can see it down there.
Dave Beamer rebuilt in Steinhatchee after Idalia, only to see his house washed into the marsh.
I feel so bad for everybody, and everybody says, I'm sorry, and everybody's sorry.
Beamer plans to build a pole barn and park a camper underneath.
And now it's time to go back to work, and let's get it done.
I'm Jennifer King.
Iranian missile attacks, ground war in Lebanon, Hamas refusing to come to the bargaining table to end the war and free the hostages. As we approach the one-year anniversary of the attacks on Israel, correspondent Clayton Neville explains where we are today.
The number of airstrikes exchanged between Lebanese militant group Hezbollah and Israel is increasing, and the potential of a deeper Israeli incursion into Lebanon looms. To this point, the fighting's been mostly limited to southern Lebanon near the Israel border. The U.S. State Department was asked if the U.S. is giving Israel a so-called green light to launch strikes into Lebanon.
It's not to speak to any one individual strike, because it is not like we are sitting and approving individual strikes, but we do approve of the Israeli government defending itself and defending its people from a terrorist organization that has continued to, that began this conflict with them on October 8th, forced tens of thousands of people to flee their homes, also has been a destabilizing force in Lebanon. We do support them taking military action to bring those terrorists to justice.
State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller says that the U.S. is closely watching Israel's attacks.
So they continue to target Hezbollah leaders and target Hezbollah officials and Hezbollah militants, and all of their strikes, at least as far as we are aware, and if there are strikes targeting other officials inside Lebanon, we'd certainly welcome that information. But nothing that we have seen as of yet leads us to conclude that they are doing anything other than targeting a terrorist organization, Hezbollah, that had launched strikes and was continuing to launch strikes against Israel, including in the last few days.
There are global implications from the Middle East conflict. An American from Michigan was killed in an airstrike in Lebanon, according to his family. President Biden was asked about support for Israel's attacks in Lebanon, and he said there should be some limits on what Israel can do, but didn't expand. He insists the U.S. is in communication with Israel about next steps. More U.S. troops, meanwhile, stationed in the Middle East. Sabrina Singh with the Pentagon.
We're not looking for a wider regional conflict. We're not seeking war with any group or organization or country in the region.
The United Nations now responding to Israel's ban on Secretary General Antonio Guterres. It called the move a political statement. Meanwhile, some good news out of the Middle East. The State Department says a woman held captive by Islamic terrorists for the last decade has been reunited with her family in Iraq after her escape and safe evacuation. It was a coordinated effort between the U.S. and Israel. I'm Clayton Neville.
When we return on America in the Morning, among the stories we're covering, unemployment benefits rise despite millions of job openings. After these messages. Welcome back. I'm John Trout. You're with America in the Morning. Thanks for listening. Less than 5 weeks before the November election, and a new book written by former First Lady Melania Trump has laid out a massive contrast with her husband on the topic of abortion. Washington correspondent Sagar Magani.
Melania Trump has exposed a stark contrast with her husband as Election Day nears.
There is no room for compromise when it comes to this essential right that all women possess from birth: individual freedom.
It's a rare expression of her personal political views. In a social media video posted before the release of her memoir, the former First Lady reveals her backing for abortion rights.
What does my body, my choice really mean?
Her position is at odds not just with much of the GOP, but nominee Donald Trump, who's been struggling to find a consistent message on abortion, wedged between anti-abortion supporters in his base and the majority of Americans who back abortion rights. He said this week he'd veto a federal abortion ban, but he's also taken credit for returning the abortion question to states, many of whom have adopted abortion bans. Sagar Magani, Washington.
Not so fast when it comes to student loan forgiveness. Less than a day after a federal judge in Georgia said he would let a restraining order against the relief measure expire, a Missouri judge has again blocked Biden's loan-cutting plan. St. Louis-based U.S. District Judge Matthew Schlepp, an appointee of former President Trump, issued the latest preliminary injunction. As a result of the order, the U.S. Department of Education is again barred from forgiving people's student loans until Schlepp has a chance to rule on the case. Biden's plan is again back on hold after a number of states filed a lawsuit arguing the president and the Department of Education had overstepped their legal authority. Shifting gears, it appears a strong hurricane Clerk will not be heading anywhere near the East Coast. Correspondent Jackie Quinn reports, however, The storm will cause tidal concerns this weekend.
The National Hurricane Center says Hurricane Clerk, well out into the Atlantic, is a Category 3 storm and may strengthen further. It's hundreds of miles east of the Leeward Islands, and it's not expected to impact land. But this powerful storm could kick up strong surf and rip currents along U.S. East Coast beaches this weekend. And there's another tropical storm, Leslie, in the eastern Atlantic. Forecasters are watching to see if that develops into a hurricane. I'm Jackie Quinn.
As we reported earlier this week, there are millions of job openings, but a new report shows applications for unemployment benefits rose last week. Correspondent Haya Panjwani reports.
The Labor Department reported that applications for jobless claims rose by 6,000. It was slightly more than analysts were expecting. Applications for jobless benefits are widely considered representative of U.S. layoffs in a given week. Recent labor market data has signaled that high interest rates may finally be taking a toll on the labor market. Separately, some retailers said they're ramping up hiring for the holiday season, but fewer seasonal employees are expected to be taken on this year. Haya Panjwani, Washington.
The SWIFT global banking network is about to test cryptocurrency transmissions as a way to prepare for digital currency transactions. Chuck Palm explains in today's Tech News Report.
The SWIFT Banking International Messaging System will be testing live transactions of tokenized assets next year. The announcement made on Thursday is the last step in a slow-moving process of testing digital currencies for transmission from bank to bank across the world. Banks have been looking into tokenizing traditional assets like investment bonds for several years, but without a vehicle to confirm the transmission like the SWIFT system, digitally verified tokenized assets have been left out to dry. Banks hope that they can use these digitally verifiable transmissions on a blockchain as a way of verifying trades quicker, cheaper, and more efficient, and cutting out the middleman that's involved in many financial transactions. About 90% of the world's central banks are testing new digital currency versions of fiat money to help facilitate the trading of tokenized assets. SWIFT announced that in March it would launch a new platform to connect these CDBCs directly to the existing financial system. For more crypto news, follow me on X at Chuck Palm.
Baseball playoffs and more with America in the Morning's Robert Workman and a check of Friday sports.
Pete Alonso's three-run homer in the ninth lifted the Mets over the Brewers 4-2 last night in Milwaukee to win the last wild-card series. Scoreless into the seventh inning, Milwaukee got back-to-back jacks from Jake Bauers and Sal Frelick on consecutive pitches and carried a 2-0 lead into the ninth with two-time reliever of the year Devin Williams coming in to nail it down. But Francisco Lindor led off with a walk, and a one-out Brandon Nimmo single brought the two-time home run derby champ to the plate. And Nimmo says Alonso did that thing.
Just for him to have the calm and to have a plan going up there, and we've talked about this, having a plan when you go up there and then just shooting your shots.
David Peterson, who fired 7 scoreless innings for the Mets in Milwaukee on Sunday, came on to get the last 3 outs and send the Mets to the NL Division Series opener in Philadelphia on Saturday afternoon. All 4 division series begin tomorrow, starting with the Tigers at the Guardians. Under the lights, the Royals will be at the Yankees, and the Padres visit the Dodgers. Thursday night football to start NFL Week 5. Kirk Cousins threw for 509 yards and 4 touchdowns as the Falcons rallied past the Buccaneers 36-30 in overtime. Baker Mayfield had 3 first-half TD passes for Tampa Bay, but Younghoe Koo's 52-yard field goal as time ran out sent the game to OT. And on the opening drive, Captain Kirk found Kadarrell Hodge, who broke a tackle and sprinted 45 yards for the winning score.
The narrative on the sideline was, we scored a touchdown, game over. And I thought, well, yeah, but you guys are acting like it's easy to go down and score a touchdown. And with the way Red did it, I guess they were right.
Sunday's action kicks off early in London with the Jets and the undefeated Vikings. The league's only other unbeaten team, the Chiefs, host the Saints on Monday night. The NHL opens its 108th season in Czechia with the Devils and the Sabres squaring off today and tomorrow in Prague. The North American schedule starts next Tuesday. And NASCAR's playoff race number 5 is Sunday at Talladega. That's Friday Sports.
Thank you, sir. When we return on America in the Morning, invasion of the tarantulas after these messages. This is America in the Morning. Thanks for listening. The sequel to the box office hit Joker breaks into theaters this weekend. Kevin Carr has a sneak peek at Joker 2.
In 2019, Todd Phillips' Joker offered a look into the mind of a killer from DC's Batman comics.
2 years ago, the name Arthur Fleck hit Gotham like a hurricane.
Now, Joker Folie à Deux continues the story of Arthur Fleck as he faces Gotham's justice system. In Arkham Asylum, he meets the mysterious Harleen Quinzel, and she latches onto him for his infamy.
I'm nobody. I haven't done anything with my life like you have.
There are some very strong elements here, including compelling performances by both Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga. The grim cinematography has a beautiful, gritty look, and the movie channels films like The Shawshank Redemption and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
How about you, Arthur? Do you still think you're a star?
However, it also stumbles by not quite nailing the homage the way the first film did with Scorsese's Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy.
I got the sneaking suspicion that we're not giving the people what they want.
Purporting to be a musical version of a twisted romance, the songs are well constructed but overstay their welcome. And that's a real shame because those are some of the best moments in the film.
It's okay, baby. Let's give the people what they want.
Unfortunately, they put a drag on the bloated running time, which clocks in at well over 2 hours.
Let's get out of here.
Ultimately worth a look, but loaded with problems, Joker Folie à Deux gets 3 playing cards out of 5. I'm Kevin Carr, and that's the way I see it.
If you have an aversion to arachnids, this may not be for you, but for those who love the cuddly creatures, correspondent Donna Warder reports it's tarantula mating season on the Colorado Plains.
Oh, cool. Not everyone thinks tarantulas are cool, but some of those who do attended the Tarantula Festival in La Junta, Colorado last weekend. Biology professor Kara Shillington of Eastern Michigan University says it's the time of year when the male tarantula leaves its burrow in search of a mate.
The females, when they come out of the burrows, very often they lay silk webbing around it, and so when the males walk past, they will come in contact with that silk.
Nathan Villarreal is a tarantula breeder.
We heard about the La Junta tarantula migration, and we just had to see it.
At the festival was a parade, a hairy leg contest for humans, a woman claimed the title this year, and a downtown screening of the 1990 cult classic Arachnophobia. I'm Donna Warder.
America in the Morning for Friday, October 4th, 2024. 10-4 is produced by Jeff McKay. Senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.